welcome. My name is Elizabeth, and my pronouns are she, her, and I'm really glad you're here. Today, I have a list of what I'm calling the best upsetting documentaries. Now, most documentaries have some sort of disturbing aspect to it simply because it's a true story, and that's what makes it fascinating, and that's why we love them. So this is a list of what I consider to be the very best. Some of them are far more disturbing than others. Some of them are, as far as I'm concerned, required viewing to be a human being. So it's kind of a long list. There's 20 documentaries on this list. I narrowed it down as best as I could. So join me for the ride. Let's go. So I put these documentaries just in alphabetical order because trying to figure out best, worst, most, least is really subjective, and it's subjective. So I'm just doing it in alphabetical order. So I'm starting with 13th. Now, you may have heard me mention before, some things are required viewing on this list, and we are starting with one. 13th is literally required viewing for everyone who lives in America, I think. Obviously, these are all my opinions, if I haven't mentioned that already. 13th is about the 13th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, which is what ended slavery. Now, if you read the wording of that amendment, you will see that it is actually not the end of slavery. It's just a change in definition. So basically, I mean, I don't have the exact words here. Watch the documentary, they'll show you. But basically what it says is free labor cannot be extorted out of a human being unless they are a prisoner. So what 13th shows you is the way that the American government managed to manipulate the situation so that they could still have slave labor. After being freed from slavery, people started being arrested for things like vagrancy, which was never something that we got arrested for before. And let's be completely honest and just call it what it is. The white people were not being arrested for vagrancy. And then once they're in the system, it's easy to keep them in the system. And once you have people in prison, you have a free labor force. It's really clearly explained. The important the talking heads that are interviewed are brilliant and well spoken, and I wanted to learn more and more from them as I watched. Again, this is something I think everyone should know about. This is just history. The only way to make sure that history doesn't repeat itself is to learn about it. So, number two. Number 2 is called Alison. Now, this is about a specific crime. This is a crime that happened in 1994. It happened in South Africa. And this young woman, she was kidnapped. She was R-worded. She was stabbed. She was disemboweled and abandoned on the side of the road in the middle of nowhere. And I'm going to spoil it for you because it's really not a spoiler. She survives. She manages to survive. The story is amazing and incredible and unbelievable, and the strength of this woman is unprecedented. So that one's called Alison. Okay, so number 3 is Beware the Slenderman. I actually have a deep dive on this particular documentary on my channel, so check it out. I'll put a link in the description. So, okay, so in the 2000s, Reddit has a subreddit that is called Creepypasta, and Creepypasta is like where all the disturbing stories go. And someone creates something that wasn't real in a photograph that looked real. And what he did was he put this really strange, too tall, faceless, limbs too long, sort of man in the background, sort of looming over things in the background. And the internet went a little crazy. And the lore of this guy, who ended up being called Slenderman, just blew up. Everyone had stories, there were games, there were, it was just, it was all over. And everyone was talking, Slenderman is real, Slenderman's not real, blah, 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 blah. Clearly he's made up, he's not real. And two girls who were 13 going on 14 became obsessed with him and the concept of him, and sort of convinced each other that they wanted to be proxies of Slenderman, so they stabbed their friend. A lot of times, I think 17 times. It's very fascinating. One of the girls is, her mental health is very much in question, and some of the interviews with her are sort of mind-blowing and jaw-dropping, and like, did that child just say that? Is this really what this child thinks? So it's a true story. It's what happened. It's rough. It also ends before you get a final conclusion. It only gets to the point where they are like, they still haven't gone on trial. So in my deep dive, I go through all of it, even the after stuff. Just saying. Anyway, on to 4. 4 is a documentary called The Bridge. Okay, so this one centers on a topic I'm not allowed to use the actual name for. So I'm going to take a page out of Shakespeare, and I'm going to say this is about people who have chosen not to be. So, Golden Gate Bridge which is in San Francisco. It's a very, very famous bridge. Many people have decided to no longer be by leaping off of that bridge. And a couple of filmmakers decided to set up a camera for, I think it's about a year, to just film the bridge and see what they catch. They had, when they asked permission for it, they said, we just want to see what life is like on the bridge. Because they didn't want people to be like, oh, now not only can I unalive myself, to use the, parlance of YouTube, but I can be famous too. They're going to film it. Like, that's the last thing anyone needs, right? Also, the filmmakers decided that they were human first and documentarian second. So if there was ever a way for them to stop someone or save someone or get help for someone, they absolutely did it. They did not question. They just tried to help. So, but there were still many, many people they caught on camera. It averaged about 1 per 15 days. It's really upsetting. The film came out in 2006. So this was, we're almost 20 years away from this. There are interviews with families of people who we have the footage of them making that final choice. And then interviews with the families and what they felt led to it and what the signs were and stuff like that. And I suggest watching it just so that you can hear from the guy who survived when he jumped in 2000. It's fascinating. And it's rough, but it's good. It's really good. And I have a lot of respect for the filmmakers. There's also a lot of footage, I should tell you, can't believe I didn't, that there's a lot of footage of people being saved. There's some really incredible footage of people either being talked off or just being grabbed or just being pulled over or what have you. It's really, and it's raw footage, so it's like really happening, and it's amazing. Okay, number 5. Number 5 is the documentary that got me into documentaries. Capturing the Friedmans. Oh, Capturing the Friedmans. So, This is about a family from Great Neck, Long Island, which is, everyone knows Long Island is, outside the New York City. And this is a pretty, wealthy, upper middle class sort of neighborhood. And it's the 80s, like late 80s. And Arnold Friedman, who's the father. There's Arnold Friedman, there's his wife, there's his three sons. Three sons. There are his three sons. I believe David's the oldest, Seth is the middle, and Jesse is the little one, the youngest. And Andrew Jarecki, who has actually become a pretty famous documentarian at this point, this was his first film, he was going to do a documentary about the children's performers. So, like, the kind of people you hire to come to your 6-year-old's birthday party, like they do magic and they sing songs and they look like a clown and they're silly and they're funny and, all that stuff. So, and the oldest, I believe it's David, is a clown in New York City. So, that's where this started, only for a legal disaster happened to his family. And Andrew Jarecki went from filming about his profession to filming about his family. So his father ordered CP and had it delivered to his house. It was a magazine, I think. And the guy who delivers it and has him sign for it shows up 10 minutes later and says, okay, I gotta check your house. And he's like, why do you need to check my house? He's like, don't you recognize me? I'm a police officer, but I was the one who actually just delivered that magazine to you. Like, I know exactly what you just got, and you thanked me for it. You knew what you were getting. Like, that's not okay. CP is against the law in every way. So the story goes that he was like, well, here, this is all I have. Here you go. And he's like, no, I have to check your house. And I think maybe from this point on, it's just so hard to tell what's real and what's not, because the cops are telling you that there is stacks of CP all over the house. I mean, you might as well think it's just all over the piano and all over the bedroom and all over the. Then they show you the pictures from the crime scene from the day that they went in and took pictures. There's nothing anywhere to be seen. Like, his wife says, I knew that Arnold liked to look at pictures. So that's where the investigation starts. And they discover, the authorities discover that he's been teaching Arnold, along with assistants from his youngest son, Jesse, have been teaching a computer class in the basement, like after school. And they assume that terrible things are happening in that class. And again, it's really, really hard to figure out what's real and what's not, because this was back when the interrogation or questioning of children was not very good yet. We were doing it all wrong. And by we, I mean the people who were in charge at the time. They would ask questions like, or they would pose questions like, we know your friend Robbie told us that this happened, so just tell us it happened. And when they say, no, it didn't happen, they'll say, no, we know it did. So we just need you to tell us what happened. Like, we know, so just let us know. Like, we just need your... It's like, that's not how you interrogate a child. You interrogate a child to find out what happened by saying, and then what happened. Completely open-ended, so that they can just tell you what they saw, what they experienced. That's not what this was. This was parents taking their children to psychiatrists to be hypnotized so that they could remember their trauma. Only we have discovered since then that is a wonderful way to implant false memories. So it's just, I mean, you've got people who are saying, I was in those classes, everything was fine. You've got kids saying, hey, under hypnosis, I found out that this is what they did to me and it was awful. And then, it's just, and then you've got experts, who are saying that this had to happen and here's why. And then you have experts saying this couldn't have happened and here's why. And what's sort of fascinating and interesting about it is that the family always seem to have a video camera going. So there's a lot of footage of the family together being a family, and there's also a lot of footage of, or at least audio tapes of fights that they were having once all of this stuff happened. And because these were, this family is a family of performers, they're a little histrionic, they want attention, they want, so they're recording everything. And it's like nobody wins, it's just one of those, nobody wins, and it's just awful. And I still, to this day, I still don't really know what happened or didn't happen. And I don't think anyone, the only people who know are, probably Arnold and Jesse and some people who were in the class. But that's Capturing the Friedmans. It's a lot. It's a lot. Speaking of a lot, the next one is by far the saddest documentary you'll ever watch, if you decide to watch it. It's called Dear Zachary, a letter to a son about his father. So I don't want to tell you too much. This is the kind of one you just sort of need to go in and watch, but know that you're going to need tissues. Like, you are going to cry unless you're heartless. It's about an amazing group of friends and family they get together and they decide that they're going to record everything that they can about Zachary's father, who has passed, and they don't want him to miss out. They want him to know who his father was amazing, right? And we lost him under really upsetting circumstances, and there's a whole crazy story, but it continues from there, and I'm just not going to give you any more information. Even though I just explained all of Capturing the Friedmans. Dear Zachary is, it's heartbreaking. It's really heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking. It's really good, but watch it when you need a good cry. Seriously. Like, you will cry. This is not just my opinion. This is across the board, people who talk about documentaries or even just traumatic, sad movies, this one will show up on the list, even as a documentary for a list of, whatever kind of movie. This will still end up on the list because it's devastating. Number 7. Okay, number 7 is actually a sort of a sports documentary because it's about a sport. So it's called Deep Breath. So this is a Netflix production. It's only a few years old, and it is. So I happen to have a phobia of deep, dark water, and when I say I have a phobia, I mean like my rational brain breaks. And I hyperventilate and I can't think straight and I'm just terrified beyond terrified, and it's you feel completely out of control. It's not just like, I find spiders and snakes and stuff to be like scary, like but I don't have the phobia. Do you know what I mean? I don't, like, my brain doesn't break when I have to deal with them. But deep, dark water has always been a really hard thing for me, which is I discovered when I was younger and I had to swim in a lake. And I looked down at my feet and couldn't see my feet, and like I said, I broke. So I think it's called thalassophobia. If anyone out there hears me saying that and thinks it's right or wrong, can you tell me down below if that's how you pronounce it? So this, I might shudder a few times while talking about this because of that phobia. So just bear with me. So deep breath. It's about free diving. Okay. Now, free diving is, these people are amazing and incredible. And Okay, so they're at the surface of the water, and this is always in the ocean because there aren't man-made places that are deep enough, really. I think there's like one or two, but might not even be this deep. And no breathing equipment. Okay, so they're at the surface. They breathe however they need to breathe to get as much oxygen into them as they can, and then they dive. And they go, and there's a rope that goes all the way down to the marker that shows that they've gotten to the depth that they need, and they grab a card, which is what proves that they went all the way down, because they can't have emergency people with the scuba gear either because of the bubbles. So all of the emergency helpers are also just holding their breath. And so they can only be at like half the depth. So many of these free divers literally pass out 5 seconds from the surface, 10 seconds from the surface, 20 seconds from the surface. Like, that's where they run into trouble because they've run out of oxygen in their bodies. Like, nope, no more. You can't be, you can't be conscious anymore. And then they pull them up out of the water and they do CPR in the water and they get them back, and they always get them back. But then that person is not, did not complete their dive. So that's what free diving is. And when they dive, it just gets darker and darker and darker. Sorry. So we meet, she's Italian. Alicia Sacchini, maybe? She's the free diver, and she's trying to get to 100, and then I think she's trying to get 120. I mean, she's incredibly amazing. And you see her, like, you meet her when she's training for these things, and then you get to see her do them and maybe reach them. I'm not going to tell you. But at the same time, we meet another guy, Stephen, I think it's Keenan. I think he's from the UK. And he did some free diving and realized that he was really destined to be a free diving coach and a free diving security safety person. So he's one of the people who goes, 20 feet down and then, comes up with them, in case they lose consciousness. And he meets this Alicia person and starts coaching her and helping her. And it's actually pretty beautiful, the relationship that forms between the two of them. And there's also cave diving where they go down and then through and then up, and it's just anyway, it's fascinating and a little devastating, which is all I'm going to tell you on that one. You should watch it. And let me just should you, but really, I'm telling you should really watch all of these. Oh, well, maybe not this one. So there are two on this list that are really, really disturbing, like top tier disturbing documentaries. This is one. It's called Deliver Us from Evil. It is about a priest who treated children the way that priests shouldn't treat children, but yet it seems like a lot of them do. This one is specifically about Father O'Grady. What's his name? Father Oliver O'Grady, right? That's his name. So, so we get first-hand accounts from the victims, some from the victims' parents and family, from victims' advocates who take victims literally to the Vatican, and there's footage of trials. And there's an interview with Father Oliver O'Grady that lives rent-free in my head. So creepy. The way that he answers these questions. I'm like, how do you not know that that's not what you should say out loud? Even if that's how you feel. Anyway, Deliver Us from Evil, Father Oliver O'Grady. and a lot of trauma, a lot of people who are very traumatized. Okay, we've reached 9. Oh, this is not going to be much more uplifting. So this one is called, sorry, I'm only laughing because it's uncomfortable, not because it's in any way funny. It's called The Family I Had. And this one is about a single mom who has 2 children. She has a teenage son and she has a little toddler little girl. And he is, you know, the brains in our world that are genius sometimes are a little broken or a little crazy or a little not well. They come together a lot. So this boy is, there's no question that he's absolutely brilliant. He's a really, really smart human being. And he wants to hurt his mom, and he figures out the best way to do it. So I'm going to leave that there. The Family I Had, as in, you know, past tense. It's rough. It's sad. It's not as sad as some of the, like, Dear Zachary. It's much sadder. But I find this one more fascinating because you have interviews with the teen as well as the mom, and the choices that they have made now that this tragedy that has struck is just have you on the edge of your seat. It'll have you on the edge of your seat. Okay, number 10, The Invisible War. Okay, The Invisible War. This is all about the R word in the military, which happens, and often the victim is blamed, or the officer in charge is blamed, even though they're not even there. And often it's, you shouldn't have put yourself in that situation, or the victim will be reprimanded because the attacker is married, and you can't fraternize with someone who's married. And it's just their way of dealing with this particular problem is very poor, to say the least. So this movie has interviews from journalists, mental health professionals, advocates, active duty and retired generals, the Department of Defense officials, and members from the military judicious, is that a word? Justice system. And then there are stories of firsthand accounts, stories of women who had to deal with this in very different ways. Everything from like the soldier that was just one of the guys until she was deployed somewhere so far away that she was literally the only female within hundreds of miles. To the girl who's senior officer, when she tried to fight back, punched her so hard in the jaw that it like broke and dislodged, and she is still having issues. And we sit on the phone with her, waiting on hold with the VA for a big chunk of this documentary, and just can't seem to get assistance. And she gave her life, I mean, not her whole life, but she gave, years of her life to our military. Shouldn't we take care of her? Shouldn't we take care of all of our vets? I personally think we should. So it's horrifying. So that is The Invisible War. Next, number 11, we are at Jesus Camp. This is another one that I've done a deep dive on, so if you're interested at all, I'll link it below. This is about the Pentecostal evangelical movements and of Christianity that and the way that the children are inculcated with the ideas of evangelical and Pentecostal Christianity. Evangelical and Pentecostals believe that the Holy Spirit can take you over, that speaking in tongues is holy, and demon possession can happen. And then they also are very, very staunch believers in the word of the Bible. Yeah, that one, you meet 3 or 4 different kids and how they feel. And I mean, one little girl says that she wants to make sure that when she's dancing, she doesn't dance for the flesh. She's like 10. How does she even know what dancing for the flesh is? Like, okay. Oh, okay. So number 12 is the other really, really disturbing documentary on this list. Now, we all know that, like, what I find disturbing and what you find disturbing are not going to match because we have different traumas. And what upsets us most is probably things that are related to our personal trauma. But I do think that this, as well as the Father O'Grady one, Deliver Us from Evil, are just awful and disturbing no matter what you've experienced in this world. So this one is called Just Melvin, Just Evil. So Melvin Just is a waste of a human life. And I'm not sorry for saying that. So this documentary is put together by Melvin's step-grandson, James Whitney. And he introduces himself, and then he introduces his family, and explains that Melvin has been essaying at least 10 of Whitney's relatives, including his mother, his uncle, his aunts, his step-aunts, and some of the people that he essayed, he did to them when they were 2. And the abuse has resulted in a family dysfunction that has spanned decades. And a lot of the aunts are now struggling with drug addiction or alcohol or bouts of houselessness or, sex work. And because of the way that this man treated them, and the step-grandson is able to actually interview Melvin. So you actually got to hear him speak. It's just crazy. Like, he married twice, and both women that he married already had children, right? So, and he made children as well with other them. They're, the list of the people that he abused in the family is just awful. There's, twins, there's sisters, there's one girl who is special needs. She doesn't walk very well, and it seems like maybe, she's a little mentally slower than the rest of us, and he takes terrible advantage of her. And they tell you what happened, all of them. And you see this family trying to exist and through their trauma, and it's Melvin Just. This one is actually, I'm pretty sure, is still free on YouTube, so you can just watch it. But bear in mind that you are going to be hearing about some really, really devastatingly awful things that a parent figure did to children. Which is just Melvin Just awful. Okay, number 13. The title of this one, Kidnapped for Christ. I'm not an expert on Jesus, but I'm pretty sure he didn't want anyone to be kidnapped. I'm pretty sure he was a pretty good guy. He didn't want to hurt people like this. So this is about a school, in the Dominican Republic that was run by people in the United States. But they had it in the Dominican Republic because there's more freedom to instill their culture shock therapy, or Christian milieu therapy, as they put it. So these teens who were sent to this school, you know, it's like the difficult kids are sent, right, to this abusive school, where the teens tell us that they were forced into labor. They had to do repetitive exercises for, you know, ad nauseum. There had been physical beatings. There was extreme isolation. There were all sorts of forms of emotional abuse. And just awful. Anyway, there's 3 kids that we focus on. And one is a girl with, they're all teens. So one is a girl with crippling anxiety disorder. One is a girl with behavioral issues due to childhood trauma. And one is a boy who told his parents that he was gay. Trouble, kids. I didn't know it was trouble to be gay. It's not trouble. It's your path to happiness. Sorry, I'm not going to get on my soapbox. Not right now. Okay, so 14. Ooh, okay. Murderous Minds, Fred and Rose West. So the reason of all of the serial killer documentaries out there, and there's a lot, I chose this one because Fred and Rosemary West are people that Americans don't necessarily know about. I know YouTube's going out over everywhere, and I'm thrilled, but the UK knows about Fred and Rose West because that's where they did their heinous crimes. So he was born in 41. She was born in 53. And he was always sadistic and awful. And it's like he met her and introduced her to his world, and she just embraced it, right? So it is believed that they killed at least 9 young women, and that includes Fred's 8-year-old daughter. And they buried them on the property, I think. It's really upsetting, but it's a serial killer couple that people don't know as much about, unless you're in the UK. And if you're in the UK, then look up the Ken and Barbie killers. That's a couple of murderous intent that were awful. Okay. I've watched too many documentaries. Okay, no such thing. Okay, number 15 is called, can I even say the title of this? Say that it's called Blank Park. And it's about a mobile home park that is run out of Florida. I think it's St. Petersburg, Florida. I'm not sure. Oh, no, it's not St. Petersburg. Not sure. I'm sorry. You watch it. They'll tell you. And it is a place where offenders can live. So they've paid their time. They've done their jail time. They've done their prison time. They've paid their debt to society or what have you. Or they're on parole. And they need a place to live. And no one will house someone who is on the registry. So this trailer park opened as a place for these people to be able to live. And some of the people tell you what they did to end up on the registry. Make sure you are in the right headspace for this. It is rough. Blank Park. It's very interesting. It's hard, but interesting. Okay, number 16. Number 16, we are at my other sports documentary. It's called The Summitt. So good. This is a great documentary. It was so well made. So in 2008, the mountain K2, which is one of the biggest mountains, it's not Everest, but K2 I think is the second biggest, and it's one of those that like real mountain climbers do. This was back in the day when only real mountain climbers could climb mountains, where you didn't just pay a Sherpa because you had millions of dollars to take you to Everest and you waited in line to stand there for a second. Like it's very different. So these were like real mountain climbers, and real mountain climbing Sherpas. And this was the deadliest day on K2. In 2008, 11 people didn't make it off the mountain. And the witnesses and people who were directly affected by it are interviewed beautifully. And reenactments are done in such a way that you feel like you're watching the footage. They explain what happened and then they show you and you're like, oh, you're showing me exactly what you just explained. That's very cool. But keep in mind that it's reenactments. Like, you're not actually watching someone fall off a mountainside. It's a reenactment. It's really good. These mountain climbers, they're like a little family, and, you know, it's heartbreaking. But, you know, they also come together as a community and care for each other and are there for each other in pretty beautiful ways. So, okay. 4 left. Number 17. We have reached more required viewing. So this is called Time, the Kalif Browder story. Now, Kalif Browder is a name that I personally think that everyone should know. Like, we should know this name like we know the name Rodney King, or we know the name George Floyd, Breonna Taylor. Like, this is another name that you should know, and because of this awful thing that happened to an innocent boy, a child. Okay, so Kalif Browder was born in 1993, and he lived in the Bronx. And in, I think it was 2009, he was arrested for stealing a backpack that he says he didn't steal. So the way our justice system works is you are accused of a crime, you're arraigned for that crime, and that arraignment says, okay, we're gonna put you on trial, and if you can't afford to pay the bail to get out of jail until the trial, then you have to just stay in jail. So bail is set at, I think it's $3,000 or $3,500, and his family simply doesn't have it. And he's not willing to take a plea so he can get out, because then he's in the system, right? I mean, he didn't do this. So he goes to Rikers Island. 16. So, Kalif would spend the next 3 years in jail without a trial. 3 years. And to make matters worse, he spent about 14 months in solitary confinement. 14 months. A child was treated this way who didn't do anything wrong. He did not break any laws. He did not steal anything. Watch this. Learn Kalif's story. It's horrifying and terrible, and there is footage of him in prison being hurt by guards. There is footage of him being beaten by other inmates, like a horde of inmates. And this, after 3 years, they offer him time served. We'll let you go right now. All you have to do is say you did it, and you can go. No, I'm not going to spend 3 years in prison or in jail, only to have you, say, oh, well, I'm guilty. No. 3 days later, I think it's 3 days later, after they offer him that, they show up at his cell and they say, you're free to go. They drop the charges. You're free to go. We have no proof. We have nobody accusing you anymore, so you're free to go. After spending 3 years, 14 months of which were in solitary confinement. Watch it. You really need to know his story. It's horrifying. It's terrible. It's the kind of thing we need to know about that's happening. Sorry, back on my soapbox, but I really truly believe that Browder's story should be one that everyone knows. So consider that required viewing as well, even though it's rough. Okay, last three. Number 18. Number 18 is not a documentary. It is a docuseries, and it's not just a docuseries. It's a 3-season docuseries. So I'm kind of breaking my own rules with this one, but again, it's another one that I think is really important. Surviving R. Kelly and the Aftermath. There are 3 seasons: Surviving, Reckoning, and Final Chapter. And you get interviews directly from people who were victims. You get interviews from families of people who are victims, family members of people who are still victims. You have to watch a family try to get their daughter back, literally, physically try to get her away from him and back to them. The stories are horrifying. The way that he treats people is horrifying. And when the first season came out, that was when Chicago prosecutors decided to charge him again and try to figure out a way to charge him again. And he's now obviously in jail on RICO charges. He's never getting out, which is great. But if you hear the things that he has done, it's horrifying. And I don't think life in prison is enough of a punishment. I mean, that's all we have. I'm not saying something worse should happen to him, but maybe it should. Anyway, I mean, and it's the way that it impacted this docuseries impacted the actual situation is really, it's pretty incredible. And I think that these women deserve all of us to take the time to hear what they had to go through. At the very least, we owe them that. So these poor women, but so strong. I mean, it's great. I mean, by the time you get to the third season, they're saying things like, I survived, and it's great. But, there's a lot to get through first. So, okay, number 19, Welcome to Jonestown. So Jim Jones is probably the most notorious, I think definitely, not probably, the most notorious cult leader probably in history. I don't know. There are other terrible cult leaders, but his cult is the one that the saying "Don't drink the Kool-Aid" came from. So he started the People's Temple, and it was founded on the idea that everybody is equal. It doesn't matter your age, it doesn't matter your color, it doesn't matter your creed. We're all equal. It's really beautiful because this was at a time when, like he says something about how his father said when he brought home a friend who was black, he brought home a friend and his father said he can't have dinner at our table. And Jim's response was, then I won't either. And so he started from a really good place, but he also, like he would do these revival meetings and he would heal people, but it was always a trick. Like there's this really famous one where this woman is like teetering up to the thing, and the next thing you know, she's dancing and running. And she was his secretary. She was never hurt. She was fine. And eventually there's some controversial things that happen with the People's Temple, and because of it, Jim Jones decides that he's going to move his entire cult to Guyana. So no, it's not in America anymore. It's in Guyana. So what can people do? And he says he's going to make a paradise. They're going to create a commune. They're going to create a wonderful place, and all the videos are so wonderful. And but they start to a senator starts to get some letters saying you need to save our children from this Jonestown in Guyana. And so a senator decides that he's going to go and just sort of check it out and see if anyone wants to be able to leave and allow them to leave and take them to leave. And Jim finds this to be like an act of, well, I guess the act of terrorism happens when the Jonestown people attack the senator. And ultimately, Jim Jones makes his entire cult drink. It actually wasn't Kool-Aid. Everyone always says don't drink the Kool-Aid. It was actually Flavor Aid. But he has them drink Flavor Aid with cyanide in it. And over 900 people cease to continue to live because he told them to. And there is audio of him telling them to do it. There's audio of a woman trying to fight it. It's horrifying. And Jim, his spiral downward is just for the ages. I mean, there's a lot of documentaries on Jonestown and the People's Temple. The Life and Death of the People's Temple is another really good one. But I prefer the one that doesn't have the reenactment because there's enough footage of Jim Jones that we don't need reenactments. We can really just see the way he behaved. Jonestown. Okay, 20. We have reached the final one. Okay, so my final on the list is a documentary called West of Memphis. This is about the West Memphis 3. So, in, I don't know the year, in the 90s sometime, there were 3 children found murdered in Robin Hood Hills, which is west of Memphis, and hence the name West of Memphis. And they were discovered hogtied, mutilated, not alive. And there were 3 boys in town who wore black, long black coats, and listened to Metallica and read books by Aleister Crowley. So they must have done it, right? So it's Damien Eccles, Jason Baldwin, and Jesse Miskelly. And Jesse Miskelly is, it's reported that his IQ is like in the 70s. And so when the police are interrogating him, first of all, they interrogate him for hours and hours and hours and hours. And finally, they say to him, if you just admit that the 3 of you did this, we'll let you go home. And that line is what causes a lot of false confessions. Just say it. We'll let you go home. The minute you say it, they're not going to let you go home. What? But Jesse Miskelly just really wanted to go home. So he admitted that they did it. That is the only evidence that they did it. That's it. And Jesse Miskelly recounts and says, you bullied me into that. You know, and his lawyers say he doesn't have the mental capacity to figure out what you were doing. So these 3 boys are put on trial and they are found guilty. And the 2 who are under 18, which is Jason and Jesse, they are sentenced to life in prison. And Damien Eccles, who is 18, is sentenced to death. So for the next couple of decades, Damien is on death row, and the other 2 are lifetime in prison. And when the first documentary comes out, and everyone's like, wait, they wore black, and so you think they killed kids? Like, what? Where's the connection there? Now, this was a small town, where people were like, oh, if they're wearing black and listening to Metallica, they're probably worshiping Satan. Only they weren't. They were just kids who liked black clothes. And It's very upsetting. So after the first documentary came out, which was the child murders of Robin Hood Hills, it was called Paradise Lost. So there were 3 that came out called Paradise Lost. There was the child murders of Robin Hood Hills, Revelations, and Purgatory. And it took them a while to do all of these, but the boys were still in prison when even the 3rd one came out. But a lot of celebrities, I can speak, a lot of celebrities came to their assistance. So like Peter Jackson, who is the director of the Lord of the Rings and Hobbit movies, and his wife, her name is Fran Walsh. They became big supporters. They came here from New Zealand. Eddie Vedder of Pearl Jam became very, very vocal about this. He even visited Eccles on death row and tried to use his fame to try to bring some justice. So Johnny Depp, Natalie Maines, who is from the Dixie Chicks, Margaret Cho, Winona Ryder. These were all people who were seen, you know, wearing the Free the West Memphis Free t-shirts, Free the West Memphis 3 t-shirts. And why I am suggesting you check out West of Memphis and not Paradise Lost is because, actually, I'm going to quote Roger Ebert, because he says it perfectly. Do we need a 4th film? Yes, I think we do. If you only see one of them, this is the one to choose because it has the benefit of hindsight. So in the first 3, there isn't a whole lot of like, who else could have done this, right? And so West of Memphis has theories about who else could have done this, that there are other people who were possible suspects. They just weren't questioned or followed because these 3 boys must have done it because Jesse said under duress, we did it. It's just terrible. So hopefully you know this about the West Memphis 3. If you don't, I am going to ruin it for you. They do agree to an Alford plea, which is admitting, like saying that you believe you're innocent, but you'll take this plea so that you can get out of prison. So they do that. They get out on an Alfred plea, and they've been out for a little while now. Damien Eccles has written a couple of books, and it's the thing, you know, what the trauma of having to be in either on death row or lifers in prison can't be conveyed correctly, I don't think. Like Damien's eyesight has been like irreparably harmed because of I think he likes to read, and he was reading in really low light because he didn't have, you know, good light. So and you know, these boys were just teenagers that wore their hair long. Like ugh, it's so frustrating. So I mean, it was great that, you know, Eddie Vedder of Pearl Jam was like, you know, let's this figured. I think Metallica actually visited also, if I remember correctly. I'm not sure. But it was pretty clear that they didn't do it. I mean, there's no evidence that they did it. And West of Memphis will give you all of the information. It's another story that we should know about because it's authority using authority wrong. Yeah. So like you're going to get the footage from the stepfather who's so mad and thinks that these boys need to like burn in hell, to him, you know, years later saying, you know, maybe it wasn't these boys. No, we've been looking around and we've been getting information and maybe they didn't do it. Maybe it was somebody else. Okay, so that is my list of the 20 best disturbing documentaries out there right now. Just before you watch any of them, make sure you're in the right headspace, that you're safe and you're taking care of yourself. Do me a favor and be nice to each other and be nice to yourself. And I'll see you next time. Bye.